Hello, everybody. I know I'm a dork, Savory 11. I know. Alright, I'm gonna pop on. Let's see if I can do this. Transition. There we go. Hello, everybody. No, why does my music never stick around? There we go. Alright, there's that. Turn that down. Let me know how this sounds. Also, I think as soon as I start the stream, I hear Newt. 1 second. 1 second. Newt is here. Come here, bud. Come on. Yes, say hi. Come on in. You're the real star of the show. Yes, you are. Hi, buddy. Yes. Hello, everyone. Let me get over here. There we go. Oh, I look all crazy. Sorry that I'm a little bit late today. I was actually on a podcast, literally that just ended right before this, so I was like running around right before that. Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to the live stream. Newt, do you want up now? Are you gonna always ruin? I love Newt, but he always makes the beginning of live streams so awkward. Because he always like, I want to have a smooth opening, and then you always like, oh, I'm gonna jump up now. Come on. Come and say hi. Come on, bud. I hope everyone's doing well. Mwah. I hope everyone's lovely. Also, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Sam JB, thank you so much for your super chat. Heart to you, my friend. I'm excited for you to watch Lower Decks. Come here, bud. Are you coming up or no? Come here, buddy. Come on. Come on. Everyone's waiting on you. Hey there, my cat. Jump on my lap and be... There we go. Here he is. Now you can kind of see him. He's just the little void cat right on screen here. Hi, little bud. Hi. Yes, hello. Yes, everyone's looking at you. Anyways, hello, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to the live stream. For those of you who are new to this is my live stream that I do each and every week. Where for about an hour, I just hang out with all of you. We chat about it, whatever you want to chat about. I give you hearts if you give me super chats, because the super chats help pay the bills, because this is my full-time job. But no worries, I try my best to pay attention to the live stream as much as possible. Otherwise, other than that, I just chat with all of you. How is everyone doing? How are things? Hello, Homebody, Cade, Pepper Film, That Other Ted, Alex W, Reed M10, Un Calamar, Dranoa, Lewis Starting, good to see you. Excuse me, Every Fairy Dies, good to see you. Ulysses the Pagan, good to see you. Strawberries in the Dark, good to see you. You're doing good. Oh, I'm glad. Oh, it's your weekend now, P. Pfeffer Film. Well, good, awesome. Enjoy your weekend. Mine doesn't begin ever. Welcome to the life of a YouTuber. I'm technically working all the time, every day, all the time. But that's fine. I enjoy the work. So it's long work, but enjoyable work overall. So, but yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying your weekend. Today's oh, yay! Today's been a good day today for me. I've been getting a little bit of work done, as well as, like I said, I was just on a podcast. For those of you who don't know, Positively Trek is one of my favorite Star Trek podcasts, and they had me guest on their show this week, because they do Star Trek book reviews, and we were reading, actually, this book, because I have it on hand, Star Trek Tales of the Dominion War, which is one of my earliest Star Trek books that I ever owned. It's an anthology book series about the Dominion War, as Newt jumps up on there. So yeah, we just talked about that on the podcast, and it was a fun time. So that was my
okay.
That was my day today. Hi, Newt. Are you gonna just ruin everything and walk across my desk? Here, Newt. Newt is currently, yeah, bud. You're gonna just run across my desk there. Is that what you're gonna do? You're gonna show your butt to everybody? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hi, bud. Hi. Yeah, you like my elbow? Is that what's going on here? Yeah. Who's a good kitty? Yeah, you like the scratches. He's enjoying the scratches right now. That's what's going on right here. Ooh, he's purring. You are purring like crazy, aren't you, bud? Yeah? He just likes the scratch. Okay, yeah, step on my... He's stepping on my keyboard, so hopefully that didn't ruin anything. He turned off the music, I think. Yeah, he turned off the music. Anywho... Yeah, Lily Hazel Eyes, thank you so much for your super chat. Heart to you. You said, happy your tort Wicked holds up. You look like you're healing well. I don't see a scar. Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, Wicked does hold. Interesting. Okay, I think where did I talk about that? Was it in a video or something? I mentioned Wicked recently. It might have been on last week's live stream or something. But yeah, I'm glad Wicked holds up. Hell yeah. But yeah, I am healing up well. You can still see the scar right there. That's the scar from the head right there. So I'm still healing up, and then also still my face is still a little bit like Newt, buddy. I love you. But you gotta either jump down or get on my lap. You gotta pick one. What are we doing? What are we doing? He's like right off screen right here. Here's Newt. There he is. Hi, bud. Hi. Yeah? Good boy. Who's a good boy? Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Aw, who's a good kitty? Yes, you are. Okay. Oh, Joanna arrives. Thank you. Heart to you. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, so, to do with surgery, for those of you who don't know, I just recently had facial harmonization surgery a little over 2 months ago, and I'm still healing up a little bit, from surgery, so I still have the scar a little bit. My face is, getting a little bit tighter. My only concern, honestly, I really love how I look after the surgery. My only concern as of right now is just my face is still, like, I still have a little bit of, like, excess skin that's still, like, firming up a little bit, so, like, if I do this, so if I hold my skin up a little bit, you can kind of see, like, my chin right there, and I love this look. But then when I let go, it's just like, you can see a little bit of the, like, the flabby skin a little bit. And that'll get firm up with time. It's going to take, like, 6 months for it to happen. But it's just it causes that's, like, the one dysphoric part of me where it's like, oh, I love this, and it's just a small, subtle change to this. So, yeah, it just is what it is. But, yeah, other than that, like, I'm really happy with how things are healing up. Everything's going good. I'm starting to feel my mouth again, which is nice, so I'm not slurring my words as much, like I'm drunk all the time. So yeah, it's all going pretty well, so. April Banner, heart to you, thank you so much for your super chat. You said, so glad I didn't miss this. What'd you say? Sorry, my thing went by fast. I've been looking for new work as my first contract in VFX runs out soon. Gonna make new reels and find a new job. Your vids keep me going, and it's so good to see you so happy. Thank you, April. Congratulations on finishing up your first contract in VFX. That's awesome. I know VFX is like a really difficult job. I do some VFX for my own work and some things that I've done, but like nothing probably on the level that you do. Mine are mostly like 2D stuff, but I did take some 3D graphics classes for a while, and I know how rough it is, especially with like a lot of the crunch in the industry. So I wish you all the best, and I hope it's going well, and I hope you're enjoying yourself and you're getting to make cool stuff. So congratulations on finishing that up, and I hope you get another one soon, and that it all keeps going, keeps rolling, and keeps being fun for you. So, thank you, April. You're lovely. And I hope you're having fun with that. John Vittles, heart to you. You said, and Leon, thank you for saying I look amazing. You're amazing. Thank you, Leon. John says, if everything, I don't know why I'm putting on a voice for you, but heart to you. You said, if everything everywhere all at once makes it to being a stage play, you should play the IRS agent. To be fair, played by, why am I blanking on her name? I'm blanking on her name from the Halloween movies. Blanking on her name. She's a great, Jamie Lee Curtis. Thank you, Alex W. Jamie Lee Curtis is great in that film. So yeah, the IRS agent actually would be kind of a fun role, if now that I think about it. She does have like a fun few bits within that episode, or within that movie. Also, do you think the movie is about ADHD? I could see that. Definitely, like, constantly, like attention grabbing, like, looking for new things in your life, like, trying to find new things and getting distracted and things like that, and having a hard time paying attention. I don't know if it necessarily is about that, necessarily. I think you could put that reading onto it. Like, I always think, like, art is interpretable, and you can sort of have your own sort of, like, ways that you relate to art. But I don't think the film was necessarily intentionally about ADHD, but I certainly could see you can get that reading out of it, most definitely. Kate MacArthur says, where can I listen to Positively Trek? It's just on, like, podcast things like Spotify and stuff. It's a really good podcast. It's my personal favorite podcast, though one of the hosts is leaving soon, unfortunately, though they're going to get another co-host. But it's a really good podcast. It's one of my favorite Trek podcasts that they've been doing. Let's see. April says, it's been a real trip for sure. Got to work on a certain fantasy movie being released by Paramount next month, which was super cool. Looking to Newark is such a drag, though. Yeah, it does. I know that feel of, like, freelance looking for work. It can be a pain, but still, the highs when you get to, like, do the things you want to do, and it sounds like you got to do something really cool working on a fantasy movie for Paramount. That sounds awesome. Like, awesome, April. That's so cool. I'm excited to hopefully, you'll have to tell us what movie it is when it releases, because you probably obviously can't say right now, but when it does release, let us know, and I would love to, like, hear what you did. It would be really cool to know that. Oh, we're going to talk about the latest episode today. We're talking about Lower Decks, which, by the way, yes, I won't spoil. I'm not going to spoil for anybody. If you have not seen Star Trek Lower Decks, don't worry, no spoilers here. But Lower Decks premiere today. Season 3 is out. Hell yeah! I'm excited to be able to talk about it with everybody because I saw the episodes like weeks ago. I'm actually still ahead. I've seen a few more episodes ahead of where everyone is. But this premiere was just so exciting. The guest star that they got in it was super cool, and some of the ways that they expanded out like Star Trek history and stuff, it was just so wonderful. Also, the transporter chief, he's everybody's dad. It was great. Yeah, so I won't spoil for you. If you have not seen the episode, don't worry. I'm not gonna spoil. I really liked it. If you want to hear my thoughts on the episode, my review is out on my secondary channel or whatever. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and all the episodes that I've seen of Lower Decks so far are really good. Not just to spoil, I've been enjoying them all. I don't think there's a bad one in the bunch of the ones that I've seen. I haven't seen the whole season yet, but of them, I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Kate. I'm just saying, yeah, you are correct. You've never seen me and Wonder Woman in the same room together, so you never know. You never know. Newt was here a second ago. Miss Wicked Wolf, you missed him, but he was there. Let's see. Oh, thank you, NCC1701, Chris. Oh, you listed the pagan. I'm sorry, I missed your super chat. Heart to you. You said, funny story. A friend sent me pics from the other weekend. We were all hanging out at a bar for my birthday. I said about the one pic, who's that one with the back turned with a nice ass? My friend cracks up. That's you. That's great. That's a great story. I would have loved to see that. That's hilarious. I would have done that myself. It was like, hey, who's the person with the great butt right there? It's like, oh, that's you. It's like, yeah, I do have a good butt. I will say, me personally, I love many things about my body. The one aspect, and this isn't like a dysphoric thing. This is just a joking about my body thing. I think I look very nice. I'm a very attractive person, I think. You have to tell me. But one aspect of my body that I'm like, ooh, that's not attractive. I do suffer from old man ass. Look, trans women are women. I am a woman. My ass is an old man ass. I have my butt does not look good. I will admit. Like, very, very publicly, I have my butt, not the best butt. Don't get me wrong. Other aspects of me, very hot and sexy. My butt, not one of those things. So yeah, that's just a joke that I always like to make. It's like, I do suffer from old man butt. It's not the best butt. Other parts though are good. I make up for it in other ways. So, thank you, Rowan. I appreciate you. Oh, hell, Zach, I hope you are too. Like, it's all about like coming to like, hell, Zach, like with our bodies, it's all about finding that balance between like our comfort with our body versus like how we want to try and like work to do things with our body, whether it be through surgeries, hormones, or through like exercise, things like that. But also just being like, this is my body, and learning to love it as it is too. It's always a sort of like finding the balance between all of those things. So I hope you do too, my friend. I hope you find that healthy relationship with yourself. Jessie, you were the first one I told about my sister being pregnant. She loves you, and I have a nephew. His name is Calton, which is a name I suggested. Oh, that's amazing! Every Fairy Dies, congratulations to you and to your sister. That's absolutely wonderful, and I'm so glad to hear you have a nephew. Heart to all three of you. Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. Mwah. Sending love to all three of you. Congratulations. That's absolutely amazing, and congratulations on being a new, I actually don't know your gender, so I knew aunt or uncle. Is there a non-gender term for aunt or uncle? A uncle? I don't. A auntle? Uncle? Now I want to know if there's a word for that. It feels like there should be. There should be a non-gendered term for aunt or uncle. Huh. We need to come up with that. And then, yeah, Kate MacArthur. And uncle seems like the right word, but like, how do you pronounce that? Antcle. Antcle? Auntcle. An auntcle. Entle and enty. I like that. Auntcle. I like auntcle though. Auntie and entle sounds interesting, but an auntcle. I think I like an auntcle. You're a great auntcle. Nibbling is a non-gendered niece and nephew, but I'm talking about an aunt or uncle. So that's just interesting. An uncle. That's going to be my guess. I'm going to go with that. Amelia Turi, heart to you. Thank you so much for your super chat. You said, what are some things you want in upcoming future Trek? Discovery Season 5, Picard Season 3, or Strange New World Season 2? Well, one of the things that they're doing that they've already announced, this isn't a spoiler, they're already doing one thing that I wanted, which is a Lower Decks crossover with one of the shows, which is Strange New Worlds Season 3, or Season 2, excuse me, is doing a crossover with Lower Decks, which I'm very pumped for. Like, that's what I wanted to see. As for Discovery, I can give you a little bit of what I want from each of those shows. From Discovery's next season, Season 6, what I really want from that show, because I love Discovery, but I just have so many frustrations with it, but I do really like a lot of what it tries to do with a lot of its characters and a lot of the like themes and ideas that it tackles. What I want from it is two things. I want from it to do, if it's going to do a serialized story, which it probably will, because it wants to stay away from like Strange New World's more episodic storytelling. So if they're going to do a serialized story, which is fine, I want them to not do a mystery box story. I don't want there to be like some big mystery that they're trying to solve by the end of the season. And I don't want it to be galaxy-ending stakes. I don't want it to be the end of the universe or the Federation or the galaxy or whatever it is to possibly be at stake by the end of the season. Those are the two things. So I think you can still tell a good serialized story without the universe being at the brink. I think that's kind of what I would want from that. Honestly, I think what I would love to see them do as like a really good season story was something that they started to do at the beginning of season, 4? Which was showcasing the rebuilding of the Federation. Like, how do you rebuild the Federation? Like, how do you reach out to these different groups? And how do you form this coalition, this political group? That's what I want that season to be about. And it's not the galaxy-ending stakes. The stakes are still decently big about, like, whether the Federation will survive or, like, grow or things like that. But it's not like the universe will end if they fail. It's more personal about the values that they believe in. I think would be a much better storyline for that. So that's what I want from Lower Decks. And then also, or not Lower Decks, Discovery. And I also hope within the way that they do that story on Discovery that it's, like a little bit more world building. My problem with this season, with the last 2 seasons of Discovery, is that they haven't because they've been focused on these big storylines. They haven't really world built this era of the Federation a little bit more. Like, what are the Klingons doing at this time? What are the what is the Dominion doing at this time? What are the Cardassians doing? Like, give us a new like reframing of what this universe really looks like in the 32nd century. I think it would be a cool thing for them to do. Strange New Worlds, I just hope they continue what they're doing. Honestly, I like the episodic stuff. Maybe build out some interesting stuff. Like, I know they're planning and bringing in the Klingons and stuff. But honestly, I really don't have anything specific. I just think Strange New Worlds keeps going with where it's going. I think it'll be great. Bring in Cybok. Cybok's wonderful. There's no, like, larger plan that I would have for that. Picard Season 3. I want it to not be TNG Season 8, but it looks like it's going to be. And I want it to really set up that era of Star Trek to really be something moving forward. Because I loved the world, like, as much problems I had with the Next Generation season, Picard Season 1, I did like some of the concepts, like where the Romulans are at, the idea of the Borg artifact. All that was cool. The stuff in Season 2, I hated Picard Season 2, but I did like the setting up of, like, the Borg to be this something new in this era. So I really hope that where they take Season 3 will be, like, really build out this universe so that, like, the story ends in a way that feels satisfying for the characters of the Next Generation. It's not just Next Generation Season 8, that they get to do different things, and it builds out this era of Star Trek so that they can maybe do spin-offs and things. What I would want from... Sorry, I'm going to rant a little bit more and then I'll finish up here. Those are sort of my... And I see your super chat, John Vinnels. I will talk about that in a second. What I would want from Star Trek generally moving forward, though, is I really want... Number one, I want a move... I'll give you my list of things. Here's my... If Jessie... Let me put it this way. If Jessie was in charge of the Star Trek universe, if I was Alex Kurtzman right now and I had sort of carte blanche to do what I want, do the Kelvin Timeline movie, have the Kelvin Timeline movie be the final Kelvin Timeline movie, at least with this cast. Maybe you could do like a Next Generation one and recast the Picard and something in future movies. But do one last Kelvin Timeline movie and have that bring an end to the Chris Pine crew of this universe. And because I feel like I love Beyond, but Beyond didn't feel like a final movie. It felt like a second to last movie. And I think that you do one more movie with that crew. do one big streaming movie that is like a big crossover between all the current shows, like have a Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Picard crossover film that I think is just like get all the fans excited, like Lower Decks in there, maybe Prodigy if you can do that. Like just some big bombastic film that like just connects all these things and like really feels like we're building up to that Avengers Endgame sort of thing. Do that once and then don't really worry about doing it again. Don't like try to force it to be this big thing every few years or whatever, like the Avengers films. Like do it once, have it be really cool, really build something for the fans and like showcase like, yeah, all these modern Star Trek things are all working together to make this cool little thing. I'd do that. And then after that, I would start greenlighting Star Trek shows that really kind of expand out the universe in a really interesting way, kind of hopefully beyond Starfleet. So you get things like a civilian-focused Star Trek show. My pitch would be like an Articles of the Federation kind of Star Trek West Wing-esque type of show that I've sort of talked about previously. I would do something like that, but like do some Starfleet shows, obviously, but like have a few shows that really expand out the universe of Star Trek into different areas, kind of like Prodigy is doing to a large extent. I think that would be kind of an interesting way to go about that. And then the last thing that I would do is I really think Star Trek is doing a great job building out it. Sorry, I'm ranting Star Trek. I appreciate you all, everybody, for listening to me doing this. But they do a really good job. I think Star Trek does a really good job with its secondary, like, beta canon stuff. Like, they do novels really well. They do books, novels and comics and all those things really well. I would go to a company like Big Finish, or Pocket Books. I know Pocket Books does some of these. They've already done a couple with them, but not like create it and be like, let's do audio dramas. And let's do audio dramas the way that Big Finish does audio dramas, where they pick characters from different things, get the original actors in, and tell stories within those universes. So you can get like Voyager characters doing stuff, like tell some stories of like Ensign Kim during Voyager's time period or after, get Garrett Wang in there, do some Deep Space Nine stories, like get Nicole Dubois back and have her do some Esri storylines and audio dramas. I think like that would be so cool to just use audio dramas to fill in these gaps. And then you could also tell original stories with them as well, but like do that. So that would be my thing. Big Kelvin Timeline movie to wrap out that Kelvin Timeline things. Big bombastic crossover film. Continue with the shows you got going on now, and then sort of like do more things outside of Starfleet, and then audio dramas. That's my pitch for if I was the Alex Kurtzman of Star Trek. That's what I would do. So, but yeah, I missed a few super chats. Let me just get to those really quickly. John Vinnell said, have you seen The Americans? I think you'd like the main actors. No, but it is a show on my list. I know I feel like I would really like it. Like The Americans is like one of those prestige shows that I know like I would probably really enjoy, but no, I haven't watched it. I know what this show is, though, the sort of like Russian spies bit. So I've heard of it, and I know of it, but I haven't gotten a chance to watch it. I think my biggest barrier is it's a very long-running show. There's like a few seasons of that. That's a little bit hard to sort of commit to right off the bat, but I do want to at some point. Vlad Tango, any thoughts on the announced Kelvin Universe series? I don't think there's a Kelvin. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think there's a Kelvin Universe series. There's a movie that they've greenlit that they're trying to pull together. I don't think there's a series though. Might be wrong on that, but I don't think so. I think the only thing that have been bandied about, there's 2 series. Alex Christian had said there's 2 series in development. One of which is assumed to be the Section 31 show, and the other is assumed to be the Starfleet Academy show that they've talked about. That may not be the case, but those are the 2 shows that they sort of talked about a little bit, and he said there are 2 shows in development. Now, whether those 2 shows are the same 2 shows, we don't know, but that's what I think is announced, plus the Kelvin Timeline movie. I mean, I'm excited for the Kelvin Timeline movie. There's not much to say about it other than I hope they really sort of use it to finish out the Kelvin Timeline, as I said, but otherwise, I don't know. Lily Hazel's Eyes, Hard to You. You said, you better freaking impress me, Picard Season 3. I'm going to have to drop my favorite ship, Seven and Raffi. I mean, I love Seven and Raffi, but yeah, I'm going to, here's my thing. Here's my hope for Picard Season 3. I know I'm just talking Star Trek. We're on it at this point anyways, so thank you for indulging me. But here's my hope for Picard Season 3. Season 1 of Picard, I liked a lot of the ideas of it, but what I hated was that it tried to wrap things up too quickly and too bombastically. Like, the opening 5 or 6 episodes of that show are actually really good in my mind. I actually really like the early episodes of Picard Season 1. But then it just tries to be like, yeah, we need to have, again, the end of the universe stakes, and things are just moving really quickly, and it, like, loses a lot of its world-building logic that it had built up. Like, for example, they had this whole, like, prejudice against synths, which was an interesting idea that is all wrapped up in the end of the episode. They're just like, oh, yeah, you know how the synths almost destroyed us all and brought down these eldritch horror monster gods to kill us all? Yeah, we'll forgive that, and we'll eliminate that law that says synthetics are banned. And I'm like, that could have been a whole season dealing with the ramifications of that they just sort of bypassed. So I was frustrated at that. But the concept of Season 1 of Picard I really liked. Season 2 of Picard, did not like it all. I'm not going to go deep into it. Don't want to rant about it anymore. I really don't want to talk about Picard Season 2 anymore, just because of the toxicity that surrounded it. Don't like it. What I am hoping is that Season 3 of Picard is that Season 2 of Picard was not as good. Because the writers of Picard had to focus on Season 3, because they were making Season 2 and Season 3 of Picard back to back. They wanted to get it done, and also dealing with COVID of it all. So my hope was they were kind of like, all right, we'll kind of let Season 2 of Picard kind of like, we'll just get it done so that we can focus on Season 3 and make it as good as we possibly can. So that is my hope of what happened behind the scenes there. Because if you know anything about working for big budget, like a big executive television, like with big companies like Paramount, they're like, get things made now, get it out, and it's less about doing art good and just making art sellable. And I know Terry Matalas, the showrunner of Picard, can make good shows. Like 12 Monkeys is a really fun TV show that he did. So I know he can write well. It's not like I think he's a bad writer or anything like that. I just think, like, hopefully they were just being like, we'll get Season 2 done so that we can really make Season 3 something special. And all signs point to that. So I'm really looking forward to Season 3 of Picard. I'm going to give it, just as I give every season of every show, I'm going to give it a fresh start. I always try to give every show, even if I have feelings on previous seasons of any show, I always try to come at it with as earnest and open a review as I possibly can of something, and open eyes, and give it just its fair shot. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that with Season 3 of Picard. We'll see if they'll do it. They have not earned that belief yet, but I'm going to give it to them, and we'll sort of see what they do. Leon, heart to you. Thank you so much for your super chat. You said, do you think you should redo Worf's forehead a little bit to be closer to Discovery's Klingons? Nah, I like sexy Silver Fox Worf. The look that they have for Worf, I think, looks great. I think they look fine. I wouldn't want Worf's design changed all that much. I think sexy Silver Fox Worf and Geordi as well looked really cool too. Like, both of them have aged very, very well. So I love Silver Fox Worf and Geordi really well. So, did I miss any other super chats? Okay, last one. Catherine and Beth, heart to you. You said, don't worry, Jessie, we're here to listen to you go on about Star Trek. Well, thank you. Thank you, Catherine and Beth. I appreciate you also. Mwah, sending you love. Okay. Now I'm back at the front of this. Okay, I'm at the top of the chat, so in case people have... If I've missed something that you wanted me to see in the chat, because I was looking at super chats, you can put it in now, because I'm all caught up on the chat now. Though, John Vinnels, heart to you, said Star Trek AU, where in the Enterprise lands either in the Dominica system with the 9 houses or the Frog Planet Amphibia. No, those would be fun. Oh yeah, that would be kind of fun, John. I would like that. That would be awesome to see. So yeah, I like that concept. Thoughts on the Sandman, Julian? I loved it. I thought it was great. I did a review on it, so if you want to hear my full thoughts on the Sandman show, go check that out. I thought they did such a great job of adapting the show for a modern day, because they really felt like the Sandman is one of my favorite comics of all time. And I was worried that they were going to do a Lock and Key to it, especially Netflix being in charge of it. Whereas Lock and Key is my second favorite comic series of all time. And the TV show very sanitized it and CWized it, for lack of a better term, made it very kiddie focused, when the comics themselves are very kind of dark. And so I didn't really like the Lock and Key version. And so I was worried about Sandman, but they just, I think they made a lot of really good choices that made it work for both the present day, by both updating some of the casting and the characters, but also some of the story choices for the medium that they did as well. Like, for example, really humanizing Sandman, Dream, really humanizing Dream more, and focusing more as him as a protagonist character, I think works really well, because in the comics, because the comic was an ongoing story that they had to keep telling week to week or month to month to month, and Neil Gaiman had to write new stories, Dream became more of a vehicle for other stories and this more ethereal element, whereas the show really more focuses on him as a character. And so you'll get moments for example, in episode, I'm not going to spoil too much, but in episode, I think it's 4, where Dream is battling Lucifer. you get that moment where in the comic, when Dream does that sort of like idea battle that we see in the show, Dream just sort of wins. Like, it's a back and forth battle, and Dream never feels like he's on the back foot at any point in that moment. It's just sort of like a cool battle of wills. Whereas in the show, he almost fails and almost loses that battle, but is inspired to win the battle by his growing relationship with his Raven, Matthew. And I like that change, not because one is inherently better or not, because in the comic version, it's cool to have a Dream be this more dehumanized, more ethereal figure. But for the show, they really are building this arc for him as a character, like Dream as a character, to showcase him becoming less this like aloof, more kind of totalitarian, dark figure, and becoming a little bit more personal, changing and growing and becoming more empathetic as a character. And so by making that change, it showcases him having empathy towards Matthew and seeing strength that comes from his bonds with other characters in a way that the comic book version of him did get, but not until much later on in his arc within the comics. And so I think by doing those changes, by having that sort of like better arc of his character, I think it updates it in a way that I think is really interesting and works for the medium of film, or television, I should say, where you have to have Dream be more of a central character than he necessarily was in the comics. So that's my argument. I think they did a really good job just overall adapting Sandman for those reasons and many others. So yeah, I really enjoyed Sandman just as a show. It was really, really good, and I hope it gets a season 2, like very, very much. So, let's see, catching up here. Orion, send heart to you. You said, I was just sharing a story about how your vid about the trans intersex episode of the Orville was one I was able to share with my friend who has come out public as a trans woman at 50. Oh, well, congratulations to your friend. I'm glad that episode was that video was able to help. Yeah, I was both frustrated with how people had misinterpreted that episode and not understood that episode of the Orville, but also really impressed with the way the Orville did that episode. Like, I really think, I've talked about this in my review of Orville season 3. As I've been really impressed with the Orville season 3 this year. I thought this season was great. I'm excited for hopefully a season 4. I have issues with some of the ways the Orville has told and still is telling storylines, doing this sort of like metaphor of storylines without necessarily being inclusive within the stories themselves of like people from these communities getting to tell these stories. Like, as much as I think they got a lot right about the trans experience in the stories, and I'm really like, there's no complaints necessarily for me for them wanting to tackle that. But it is frustrating me because it does have this sort of air of problems with like trans representation of the past, where you would see like Hollywood really trying to make transgender stories and tell like the hardships that trans people face, and trying to do it sympathetically, but doing so in a way that sort of aggrandizes themselves rather than actually demonstrably helping trans people. Like the example that I would give, what was it, 1999. There are 3 movies that I would consider to have either trans or trans-adjacent types of stories. And that is Boys Don't Cry, which was a movie about a trans man. The Matrix, which we all, like, I've done videos on, like, that film, while not explicitly trans, was made by trans directors and has very clear, like, in trans subtext to it. Like, for example, the red pill was meant to be estrogen pills because at the time estrogen pills were literally red, and this whole idea of like living a life that you like feels wrong but you don't know how to articulate it, and then having someone come in and being like, let me show you the world this way that you could actually live, and that being resonating with the trans experience. Neo literally being dead named by Agent Smith, calling him Mr. Anderson, and Neo saying like, I am Neo. Like, there's a lot of those transgender aesthetics and concepts and themes within that movie. And then the other one that I would argue is not directly trans, but has a very similar vibe to it, is Fight Club. Came out that year too. And while that movie is not trans, it is a movie about this man struggling with not only capitalism in the same way that The Matrix is a movie about capitalism as well, but struggling like with his masculinity and this anxiety of the fact that he does not feel like he is living up to this version of masculinity that he has been told to have by the world around him, by society, by capitalism, this sort of like commodified version of like masculine heroship that he never really lives up to. And so it's this disconnect between the man that he is, Ed Norton is, versus the man that he wants to be, this sort of like tough guy Brad Pitt exterior, and sort of that like lashing out into violence and anger and sort of desire for power. And I feel like that is an interesting sort of look at our relationship to gender and gender expectations in a way that does feel, again, not trans in the way that like you're transitioning from one gender identity to another, but a movie that is struggling with gender identity. And the reason I bring up those 3 films within this context is that, like, of all those films, Boys Don't Cry, The Matrix, and Fight Club, those 3 movies, of all those 3 movies, only one of them is explicitly about a trans person. Only one of them. And yet, I feel like the one movie that is explicitly about a trans person of those 3 is the one is one that, for me personally, I'm not going to speak for all trans people, but for me personally, resonates with me the least as a trans person. Not just because it's about a trans man or anything like that. The reason it resonates with me the least is because that's a movie that's not for trans people. It's not inclusive of trans people. It doesn't speak to the ideas and problems that trans people are feeling day to day necessarily, even though we do face discrimination. It is a movie made for cis people to feel pity about the trans person. It's supposed to be like, oh, doesn't the poor trans man have it so hard? Oh, doesn't he have to like face this discrimination? Gets killed. Like, it's all horrific and horrible and defined by trauma and pain. It is a very cis gaze. Exactly. Moonfall Guys, the cis gaze. It's a movie made for cis people. And so of those 3 films, the one film that is about a trans person, I feel like is the one that speaks least to trans people. Speaking for myself, you may have a different relationship to that film, and I don't want to like say that that's not valid. But for me, that's the case. And so I look at the Orville, and I contrast it with modern Star Trek like Strange New Worlds and Discovery, which are actually inclusive of trans people. And I think the Orville does a really good trans storyline really well, and it speaks to me on some level, but it's not inclusive of a trans experience in a way that I think like Discovery or even Strange New Worlds really are, by having trans characters within the story, but also speaking to the more day-to-day issues that a trans person faces and feels and struggles with and thinks about, and enjoys and feels joy in a way that the Orville doesn't really discuss. What is a day-to-day life of a trans person like? And we don't really get to see that with Topa as a character. We see the struggles that she faces, like being discriminated against, but we don't really get to see what being trans gives her as a person day-to-day. And I think we get to see that better in Discovery. So yeah, it's just an interesting conversation with that. So I missed a few super chats during my rant there, so let me just quick talk about them. John Vinos, sidebar, Anne is a Terran, Sasha is a Klingon, and Marcy is a Vulcan. I think I missed some context there. Apologies, John. My apologies, my friend. Sarah! Oh, heart to you, Sarah. How are you liking A League of Your Own? I love it. If you have not watched League of Your Own, it is so much fun. It is also very gay. It's one of those shows, it kind of reminds me a lot of, well, I don't think it's as subversive and as excellent as the show. It kind of has the same feeling for me as Pose, in the sense that it is a show that does not shy away from some of the hardships of the time. And again, I think Pose more directly looks at like issues that need to be talked about, like the HIV epidemic and trans women of color's place in sort of like 1980s New York and 1980s queer and ballroom culture. But it sort of has the same aesthetic in that, like, it's a show that doesn't shy away from those things. It deals with racism. It deals with, like, the pressures that queer people face this time. But it also has, like, a joy. It has fun within that. It doesn't allow these stories to be defined by that. Kind of what we were just talking about, right? Like, it allows those elements to be part of the story, not the story. And I really enjoy it. And it's just a fun show. Like, A League of Their Own, from a queer perspective, I think is so great. Because it allows us to feel those moments that are tough, yet still have fun and joy within that. And I think it was just a very honest show in so many aspects, and yet still fun. So yeah, I love A League of Your Own. I'm not even really a sports movie person. I think, and so that's really funny. So yeah, I think it's a really great, if you haven't watched A League of Their Own, go watch it. It is great. It is absolutely great. I might make a video on it at some point, if and when I have the time, because I'm busy as all hell at the moment. But if and when I have the time, I would love to do a video on it. Chloe Brennan, you're talking about Dallas Buyers Club. Heart to you. Yeah, Dallas Buyers Club also fits in that sort of like cis-gazy, like, well, let's pity the trans person sort of thing, without actually being inclusive of trans people, both in the telling of the story or in like the way trans people actually live our lives. Excuse me. M. Vozo, a heart to you. You said, who is a trans historical figure you would like to see a biopic of? Thanks for making trans news these days a little less stressful. Well, I'm glad, M. Vozo. Thank you. I appreciate that. You know what I would like to see more? We get a little bit of this here and there. Every fairy dies. I enjoy you being drunk. Enjoy being drunk. Drunk is fun. Don't worry about super chats. Mwah. Enjoy drunkenness. Drunkenness can be fun. Just take care of yourself. But I would love to see more historical movies that are talking about transness in different cultures and different time periods. And not necessarily saying, like, this person is trans and, like, the way that we think about trans today, but also making it very clear that this is a trans sort of story. Kind of like a Mulan-esque thing, but being more explicitly like this. Like, Mulan was sort of putting on the guise of a man in order to get into these worlds. But there are stories of people who transitioned and wanting to, like, be seen as a different gender than the one that culture would show them, choose them to be within different societies and cultures. And one of the things that we don't talk about enough is that fact, because a lot of vilification of transgender people today comes from this misinformed concept that, like, transness is a Western creation. You know, you see things like Matt Walsh in his What is a Woman documentary that I'll talk about in my video that I'll be doing really soon on the continuing part 2 on that film. But he's just as an example where he'll argue that, like, oh, transness was the concept today was like this Western creation created by people like John Money and Kinsey. And it's just like this idea that man and woman could change or whatever never really existed before now, which we know is an abjectly ridiculous idea in the sense that, like, there have always been people in every culture and every society who wanted to be seen in a different way than the, like, pre-described norm placed upon them. And different cultures and societies were sometimes more restrictive of that, like we have today in our very capitalistic, everyone needs to fit in their boxes society, and be consumable and make, you know, like, sort of fit in these consumable identities. And some were freer about that, like you see with a lot of indigenous cultures being a lot more accepting of two-spirit folks, for example. And so while we wouldn't necessarily call these people in past cultures, like, transgender in the same sense that we have today, given that, like, transgender is sort of this mix of both cultural ideas, sociological ideas, philosophical ideas, as well as just politicized identities. Like, trans people are politicized and marginalized identity as well. So transness today has sort of all those factors within it. But you have people who have always sort of had those sort of, like, similar contexts within their own cultures as well. And I would love to see films made about that experience and being like have the filmmakers and the creators be people from that culture first off, but also being like, yeah, this is about kind of relating to an experience that may be analogous to a trans person today or similar or relates to a trans person today, even though it's within these cultures, and saying, like, yeah, this is a queer kind of film, but allowing it to, like, showcase that these identities have always existed throughout time. And so I think that would actually be a really necessary story to really showcase, to really push back against those ideas and teach people about that. I think that would be such a cool idea. And then there's also a bunch of other, like, interesting figures. Like, there's I forget the name of it, and I want to do a video on it. I have some research on it, but, like, a video that I wanted to do, but a film that I would love to see is there was actually a record company based here in the Pacific Northwest. I'm blanking on the name of it. Again, I have it bookmarked in an article that I have that I want to do more research on to do a video on. But it was a record company that, like, was very feminist and accepted trans women as part of the working at the company. Because they accepted a trans woman, there was a group of TERFs called Gorgon. I think they were called the Gorgons, who, like, showed up armed at one of their music festivals to fight them and honestly, like, tried to cause violence back in, I think, like, the 80s. Against the fact that this, like, feminist record company accepted trans women, because TERFs are jerks, and horrible fascist people. TERFs are fascists, so there you go. So yeah, I think that would be a really cool storyline to see and talk about. I think that would be kind of fun. So yeah. William Stewart, heart to you. You said, who would you cast as the Kelvin timeline versions of Captain Picard, Dr. Hershey? That would be a whole video, William. I mean, James McAvoy would be sort of an easy choice there. I to cast as Captain Picard, but he might be getting a bit old now. I'd have to think on that, to be kind of frank. Who would I cast as Picard? I'd have to, like, I'm very bad at, like, see, people always ask me these questions. I'm actually very bad at, like, choosing cast because I, like, need to look at a list of people that are in front of me. And also I usually just like finding new people as well if I'm going to cast things. Yeah, nothing's coming to mind. I'm apologies. I'm sorry about not answering your super chat really well. I'm very, for some weird reason, this type of question of like, who would you cast in things, I'm always really bad about. I'm just absolutely terrible at like casting things off the top of my head. So apologies on that. Vin Diesel Picard would be great. I'd be here for it. It's family. Make it so. I don't know. It'd be fun. Carlos, Chloe Bennett. I would love to see one about Wendy Carlos. Who was Wendy Carlos again? The name sounds familiar. I'm blanking on. Carlos. My internet will work for me. American musician and composer, best known for her electronic music and film scores. Interesting. I actually don't know who Wendy Carlos is off the top of my head. That would be interesting. I will bookmark her. And I will learn. Well, hopefully I'm not misgendering her because they might have misgendered her in this thing. But when Wendy Carlos, yeah, okay, yeah, I would love to. That would be interesting. I'll take a look at her. Oh, she composed scores for. Ooh, okay, so I have run into her. I just didn't know that. Oh, she would be great. Just looking at she composed music for Stanley Kubrick's films, and Tron. Oh shit. Okay, I will definitely research Wendy Carlos more because hell yeah, sounds right up my alley in terms of people that I'd want to talk about. People are talking about, a review talking about music was my first shit. Oh, you talking about, like, my autism? I do, like, autism content. I do actually want to talk about autism. Could you maybe make a point to, talk about autism? Sorry for asking, but you've been a source of inspiration knowledge. That's something I'm learning about myself in my life. Yeah, I do want to do more, Pedro, talk more about autism. I'm sorry that I haven't so much lately. I've been meaning to. It's just that my content has been, because trans people specifically have been so attacked, and also my hyperfixation, considering I'm on the spectrum, has been Star Trek. A lot of my content's focused on those things, but I do want to talk more about autism. A video that I really want to focus in on soon is actually talking about autism within the trans experience, not just like the confluence of like the crossover between what it means, like the fact that there are a lot of autistic people also identify as trans, and what does that mean, and looking at that, how also people's transness is sometimes denied them because they are autistic, with people saying like, oh, are you sure you're really trans? You are autistic, so are you really sure? It might just be an autism thing, when like that's absolutely horrible to do to somebody, to try and gatekeep their identity because of like another aspect of their identity, but it's something that you see often within many different marginalized communities doing to each other. So I would love to talk about that, but also I would want to talk about like what it's like to be a trans person who is autistic, and what does that experience bring to certain things, like for example, like danger. Like being a trans autistic person means it's harder for me to read when people are acting in bad faith, and we see a lot of like, this is sometimes hard for me to filter. Like people will ask, like there are those sea lion questions, like what is a woman, and like the many like bad faith questions, and as a autistic person, it's sometimes harder for me to read those situations where it's like, oh, people are being bad faith, or when I enter into a situation in like a public place that is unsafe, and it's harder for me to be better reveal about that. But also like other things too, where like being autistic gives you like you're very for me as specifically, there is an element of like being autistic that has been added a lot of joy to my trans experience in very specific ways. Like I am very physically sensitive as an autistic person. Like I have a lot of physical hypersensitivity. To the point, like I remember when I was young, I would always get really bad. Like I would always get so itchy if like my tags on my clothes stayed on. So my mom would always have to like cut them off. And so part of my experience coming out as trans was like when I got to wear clothing that felt more comfortable and fit me better and fit my body better and just got to be like more comfortable material, like wearing women's clothing, like those elements like were a very important part of my journey as a trans person, and they became like the tactile feel of women's clothing was just like something that meant a lot to me. Not that it was like the defining thing of my trans experience, but there's an element of like me being autistic that sort of like caused like clothing to be a very important part of my trans experience and my coming out. So I think that would be a very sensory experiences. I think that would be a very very like interesting sort of argument. Hots no bail. Shame on Matt Walsh. He is smart enough to understand our issues. Oh yeah. Again, we'll talk about this in. I have a part 2 of. So I'm gonna be honest with all of you. One of my frustrations with my part 1. I know a lot of you all liked my first part of my first video on Matt Walsh. One of my frustrations with that video is I wrote that part 1 at the same time that I wrote part 2. I actually wrote both sections of that film at the script was done together. But because I knew part 2, I'm going to be doing a lot of things. Like, I am filming a lot for it. And so they're honestly intrinsically linked together as an argument. But because I was going to take forever to do part 2, I released part 1 first. And people have commented on that, most in bad faith. Most of, like, Matt Walsh stands. But most people are just like, you only argued that he's biased, which whatever, like, of course he's biased. And I'm like, yeah, but that's an important aspect of it. But it's an important thing to come into when we get to the second part of the video, because the second part of the video is pointing out, like, how this bias is informing how he lies and misinforms about all these pieces of information. So the argument going into video 2 is to be like, okay, so a lot of people saying he's just asking questions, he's presenting all this information, but we already know from the start that this information is coming from a source that has no interest in actually showcasing this from an unbiased way, from actually exploring the question in an earnest way. And so a lot of it is just, honestly, just wrong misinformation. And so part 2 is literally just breaking down how all of this is not just like bad information, but deliberately picked misinformation on Matt Walsh's part. That Matt Walsh is a lying liar who lies, and intentionally so, to stoke his own power and base. And that it's intentional. It's not incidental. It's intentional. And so, yes, Matt Walsh is smart enough to know about trans people and to know better about trans people, but he is neither incentivized to learn more about trans people because he makes money off of deliberately spreading misinformation about trans people. And on top of that, as I'll discuss in the video, there are things to know that he knows the truth about trans people. He knows what trans people really experience, and he deliberately still misinforms about it anyways because it suits him and it makes him money and builds his power. So it's an important framing to have, but unfortunately one of the frustrations is I wish I'd been able to release both parts together, but just due to scheduling and things like that, it's unfortunately not going to be the case. So we're in this weird middle ground right now where part 2 has not been released, but part 2 is a necessary aspect of part 1. And so I'll probably release part 2 next month, and then once part 2 is released, I'll probably do an edit where I put both parts together and release that and have that be sort of the one that I share going forward with people, even though it'll be a really long video. I think it's important to share it that way. But again, welcome to capitalism, where I still need to pay the bills, so I had to release them separately. Unfortunately, that's just the case. So there it is. So yeah, that's preview of my part 2 of Matt Walsh's film. But thank you very much, Darth Malagus, for saying nice things about it. Because I do think the part 1 is great. I just don't think, like, my problem with part 1 is not that I don't think it's good, but I think that it is because it is incomplete. It is not going to convince anyone who wasn't already convinced. And I think that once the whole thing is complete, it will be better able to convince people who are on the fence about Matt Walsh's film. But as it stands, I don't think it's necessarily doing that. But it will. But I don't think it is yet. So, we'll get there. Joshua, probably, I missed a few super chats. So, Joshua, I just want to say you're beautiful and awesome. Can't wait to watch Lower Decks premiere, but I'm waiting to resub, resub Paramount Plus until after Nickelodeon Day. Well, yeah, I'm excited. You'll enjoy it. Season 3 of Lower Decks is awesome, so I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it. So, thank you, Joshua, and you're beautiful as well. William Stewart said, no worries, I'm not answering the super chat. If you choose to make one, I would watch a video of your casting. Ooh, okay, yeah, I would. A video of that would actually be fun, because then I could actually do it. So maybe I'll add that to my list on my secondary channel. I'll do a casting of the Kelvin Timeline movie. That'd be kind of more fun, because then I could have more time to think about it. April Banner, Heart to You said, I gotta get working on my portfolio reel and go to bed after that. But if you want to know the movie I did, it was the D&D film. Oh, awesome! That looks really, really cool. The owl bear looks. I'm so excited for just the owl bear, and there's Chris Pine in it. April, you're probably not here anymore because you sent the super chat a minute ago. But like, hell yes. Yeah, I'm very excited for that movie because I think it looks like a lot of fun. It looks like just like the most like over the top D&D kind of film like that I always wanted, where it's just like the characters like, yeah, we'll stop the bad guy, stop the evil dude, but we're just gonna also like get really horny and just run around doing nonsense and stuff. So it looks like a very fun film. I'm excited for that D&D film. So I'm glad you worked on it. And thank you, Darth Malagus. I mentioned that one earlier, but heart again to you. And then you said, Jason Nublar, heart to you, thank you again. You said, will you be covering gender in Africa? So yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about with the Matt Walsh video. Yes, I will be talking about gender within Africa and the things that Matt Walsh, for those of you who don't know, within Matt Walsh's film, he does go to like Africa and like uses this argument of like, look, this African tribe doesn't believe in non-binary people. So this idea of like Western, like the idea that like all cultures had what I just said earlier, right? This idea that like that gender existed outside of different binaries before just the United States. So like I said, again, I'll make this in the video in a better, more articulate way because I'll do the research, but Matt Walsh argues within the film, and it's part of his argument throughout the whole film, but he argues that gender, being trans is a Western creation, which we know is not the case. But one way he argues, tries to bolster that point, is he goes to this tribe in Africa, and he talks to the African tribe, and they also have this sort of like male-dominated, patriarchal, men are this, women are this, sort of gender society. And then he uses that to argue like, well, if this African tribe is this way, then that like disproves this whole idea that like that gender existed outside of like throughout history and cultures. And it's literally an argument of like, look, my black tribe friend said it's okay. So it's okay if I'm asshole to trans people. But not only that, it's like, just because you found one tribe who somewhat aligns, and they don't, by the way, and I'll talk about it in the film, the tribe that he uses doesn't actually exactly align to our ideas of gender. I'll talk about that. But the Maasai tribe that he speaks to, just because you found one tribe that seems to align more with your view of gender does not mean that all cultures everywhere throughout history didn't also have different concepts of gender. When we say that, like, when we argue that like trans people and different concepts of gender have existed differently throughout time, we're not saying that no other cultures had very similar ideas about gender as we have today. We're saying not all cultures had very similar ideas about gender that we have today. And so he just sort of like uses this really dumb argument in a very recent way, a very racist way, I should say. That's like, again, hey, my black friend tribe said it's okay. And it's also a call to he also uses a call to primitivism as well within that, which is like, look, this ancient culture believed it this way, and because it's old and ancient, it's somehow more true. This conservative belief that like, as a conservative is like a philosophical idea that like things that have existed for a long time are inherently truer and more correct. Like this traditionalist knowledge that's passed on is somehow like already just more correct, and sort of equating it to God-given truth as well, which is already a fallacy in and of itself from a conservative philosophical mindset. But also is just also the racist on its face when he's using primitivism to make that argument. He's using primitivism to make that argument, but he's using that call to primitivism about a tribe that exists today. Like, this Maasai tribe is not an ancient mystical tribe that existed in the past. Like, they are people alive today, existing today, living their lives today. So this idea that like this primitive group of black people are like this noble savage idea is racist on its face. It's, again, as I kind of alluded to there with that noble savage like statement, it showcases these very idea of like this like very racist ideal of like, oh, look at these like black people that live, oh, so noble, like very primitive people, but oh so noble. So yeah, it's a very racist argument. It's a very racist argument. In the film, and I break it down within part 2, and we'll get there, but yeah, I'll be talking about that. One aspect though that I will say, and I do say within the video and the script, is like, I don't want to be, I talk about some of the way the Maasai tribe does gender people, that is actually different than how we gender today, but I also make a point in there being like, I am not an expert on this. I am like a white girl living in the United States who has no cultural experience with African tribes. Neither does Matt, by the way. And so, like, my goal here with that argument is not to be like, I'm here coming in as an expert about this. Mine's more just breaking it down from, like, a Western perspective on the way that Matt Walsh is arguing things. But I'm not coming in here to, like, judge an African tribe as, like, a white girl from the United States. So it's like, it's a fine line that I need to make sure I walk, because it's like, I don't also want to make this argument of, like, but they would actually believe this way, when it's like, I can't speak for them, and I'm not from that culture, and so it'd be incorrect of me to do so. So it's more breaking down Matt Walsh's side of the argument than I am going to be like breaking down African gendered norms, because that's not really my place to do so. So yeah. And we got bots. Hello, love chat. XYZ, good to see you, my sexy friend. We're thank you, thank you very much to the mods for catching that. I appreciate that. So yeah. Any more super chats before here? I think I'm all caught up on super chats. Yeah, I've already been talking for an hour, which I didn't realize. Thank you. I ranted a lot today. This is a good rant. Yeah. What does anyone else want to talk about anything? I'll talk for a few more minutes before I wrap out, because I've been ranting a lot at you. So anyone, want to talk about stuff? What does anyone else want to talk about? I'm glad you're here for the rants, Moonflower Gal. I'm glad. Now that Lower Decks, will there be more Drawn to Trek? So those of you who don't know, Drawn to Trek is the podcast that I did with my friend Geek Filter, who might be in the chat, but he sometimes appears in the chat. Aaron Harvey is his real name. Possibly. I'm hoping to. The thing with Drawn to Trek is it was a podcast we did around Lower Decks. It was a podcast about Star Trek Lower Decks that we just talk about. And I want to do it. The issue is both he and I are busy. I'm busier than ever nowadays, and he's also busy. So what we're thinking is we will still do the podcast. It's not 100% yet, but what we will probably do is we're not going to do every episode a podcast on it, but probably either every other or every 3 episodes. So the hope is to do more Drawn to Trek podcast. Hopefully it's going to come back, but we'll see how often it will be. But more than likely it will happen, just more a question of how often. So, yeah, that'll be the answer to that. Quick question, Jessie. Are you going to do any podcasts on Babylon 5 Crusade, DBNX 1701? Obviously referring to the Jumpgate podcast that I do with Vera. So for those of you who don't know, I do a podcast with my friend Vera Wild of Council of Geeks channel, where we rewatch every episode of Babylon 5, me for the second time, her for the first time. It's really fun, and we're planning for that podcast to review not only the series, but all the movies as well. But then there's the spin-off show, Crusade, which I really like. I actually really enjoy Crusade, and I would like to cover it. The question is whether Vera will want to. So I'm down to do the Crusade show. It's more of a question of if Vera is down to do it or not. I'm down to do it. But it'll sort of depend on where we're at when we get to the end of Babylon 5. And so it's like whether we're going to be busy, like, you know, that's going to probably be like 2 years down the line before we get there. So 2 years down the line, who knows where either of us will be, whether we'll be busy, we'll have time, whether she'll even want to do that. So we'll get there when we get there is the long and short of it. I'm down for it as of right now. No guarantees, though. It really just depends on where we're at, you know, year or two down the line when we get there. So. Oh, we'll watch Third Space. We're definitely watching. We're gonna watch all the movies. So Third Space and Third Space and stuff. Yes, we will definitely watch that. So all the movies we will watch. Whether we watch Crusade is more the question, but we will watch all the spin-off movies and stuff. Hontus Farmer Heart, do you think so for all that, even if it takes exception? If I take exception, I always appreciate you, Hontus Farmer. So yes, of course, please, I appreciate you. Mwah. Thank you for your super chat, my friend. Alrighty, everybody. I think I want to wrap out the stream and end out today. Some announcements before I go. You are pretty and beautiful, Lewis Darden. Mwah. You are pretty and beautiful and awesome. Adore you. Announcements. Tomorrow. My hope was tomorrow I was going to release my part 2 of the video on The Boys. Unfortunately, I was running into issues, and I'm still running into issues with that video getting demonetized in the back end, even though I've censored all the sex and all the gore, unlike I didn't do for part 1. And apologies for not putting a better content warning on part 1. That's on me, so apologies to anyone there. Part 2 has a content warning. I've censored all the gore. I've censored all of the sex in it, and I'm still getting demonetized stuff on it. So I'm trying to figure out the issues with that. So that video is going to be delayed a week. You will get it next week. Patrons, you'll be getting it this weekend because I'll give you the uncensored version. Same thing with Nebula as well. But patrons, you'll get the uncensored version this weekend. Everyone else will get the censored version next week whenever I'm able to get that done. But because of that, because they did promise a video, I do have another video going up tomorrow. We're going to be talking about Hunter Schafer and the recent controversy around her and her liking a transmedicalist post. The video, I will let you all know right up front. While we will be talking about Hunter Schafer, the video is actually less about her and more about transmedicalism and breaking down transmedicalism and the ways that, especially the post that she liked, was blaming non-binary people for the way trans healthcare has been vilified, when actually that's not the truth at all. So that the video is going to be more breaking down the problem with that and issues with transmedicalism more than it's going to be like breaking down Hunter Schafer, because ultimately it's, you know, the view is awful, and if Hunter Schafer holds those views, it is horrible, and we need to call that out. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's more just like Hunter Schafer liked a really problematic post. So I'm going to more use it as a way to get into the conversation about transmedicalism, conversation that some people may not have been exposed to, more than I'm going to go off about Hunter Schafer. So it's more of an inroads to get to a larger conversation than it is to talk about this specific celebrity. So hopefully it'll be a good conversation. I hope you all enjoyed that. Yeah, I really appreciate you all. So be on the lookout. That'll be coming out tomorrow. 255 AD, it was the Maasai tribe. Was the one. I don't know if it was a specific one, but it was a Maasai tribe as well. Anyways, everybody, check out that video tomorrow. Boys video coming soon. Matt Walsh video coming soon. A couple other things as well that I have on the horizon. Oh, also an interview with Bill Wolkoff, who's the Star Trek Strange New Worlds writer, producer that I interviewed, will be coming soon. Check out my review of Star Trek Lower Decks, because my favorite show is back. I love Lower Decks so much. That video, the review of that is up right now. So please go check that out, because God, I love that show so much, and I'm so happy it's back. So check out that review. Until then, I love you all, and I hope you all have a wonderful night, and I hope you all live long and prosper. So, all right. Good night, everybody.